Hi, friends. I'm Andy Green, and this week's episode was recorded way back in September, featuring the Astro Daddy himself, Danny Santos. What follows is a birth chart reading that chronicles where I've been and where I'm going. Where are my wounds? What needs healing? What am I good at? What do I need to work on? What is my destiny? Holy shit. Well, let's find out because this is the Naked Man Podcast. All
All
right.
right. It is
Perfect.
Monday, September 12th, 2022, and this is
Cool.
Danny Santos reading for Andy Green. Hey, Andy.
Woo! Hello, Danny. Oh man, so professional already.
I
Ah,
know. I mean, we're doing the session, so I gotta make
yeah,
sure I say it all correctly. Just my little spiel here. Do I have your permission to record you on this line?
you do.
Okay, and you have my permission as you're going to be the one who gets this recording since I've made you the host on this session. But everything that we talk about here today is confidential. So it will stay between you and I. And then also, this is a safe space. So we're going to probably go into some deep topics such as family, trauma, sex, relationships, career, like the whole shebang. Do we have a deal?
We have a deal. Yeah, I'm excited and nervous. All the things.
Okay, amazing. Well, when
Yeah.
we look at your birth chart, you were born on Saturday, May 14th, 1988 at 7:10 p.m. in Seattle, Washington. This is all correct?
This is all correct. Yeah, that's what I've been
Okay.
told.
All right. So if I were to ask you what's your sign, what would you say?
Taurus. Taurus.
That's
Yeah.
right, baby. um, have you ever done astrology before? What's your level of familiarity with astrology so I know how to cater this towards you?
So yeah, good question. I mean, I think until very recently, I was pretty, I would even say judgmental about it, or at least like ambivalent. I was sort of like, that's cool. It's not something that I'm concerned with, uh, but I have been recently, probably in, Congress with like Lily getting more into it. I've been sort of absorbing some of it and just like noticing some of the patterns that I find useful, fascinating, and that I think tend to like a lot of certain people. Like I tend to connect a lot with other Tauri, and then, but also Scorpios, which is Lily. Like, I feel like I find a lot of Scorpios too. That seems to
Yeah.
just happen. And I think I just become more curious. Like, I mean, our first kiss was in front of House of Intuition. Uh, or
Of course it was.
I guess it was in El Prado, but like the more intense follow-up was there. And like we have always sort of gotten candles and things, and that sort of has then, I guess, blossomed naturally to here,
Yeah.
where I'm sort of, yeah, more I'm curious, and I think there is just useful information. But I don't know like my other moons. I don't know. I've listened to or read some horoscopes and things over the years, but that's about it. I we'll see. Maybe I would say beginner, but
Okay.
yeah,
Perfect. That's good to know because
yeah.
now I can kind of I'm aware of going a little deeper into each thing and like really explaining things out as much as possible. So when we look at your birth chart, there's something that every person has in their chart known as the big three. Have you ever heard of this before?
Uh, no. Or I mean, I guess I mean I think it's like probably the rising moon or something like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. The sun, the moon, and the rising sign.
Okay.
So also known as the big three. So, because they make up the big three major aspects of personality. So the sun sign would be equated to what Freud calls the ego. So it's our external vehicle and personality through which we move through the world. The moon sign is what Freud would call the id, the unconscious mind, our instincts, our reactions, and our feelings. And then the rising sign is kind of like the super ego, how others may be projecting onto us, how we can also project onto ourselves and say, I must be this thing. It's our self discipline mechanism, but it also has a lot to do with how we show up in the world.
Hmm. Okay.
So when we
Interesting.
look at your birth chart, I mean, do you know what your sun sign is?
I do not.
Okay, so You were born on May 14th during Virgo, or excuse during Taurus season. You were born on May 14th during Taurus season. So this means that your sun sign is Taurus because you were born during Taurus season.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the ego, the external persona, is always denoted based on what season you're born into.
Okay.
So let's just have a little conversation about Taurus. What do you know about this sign?
I mean, the bull, and I feel like there is some sort of a stubborn nature, I think, in that, but I think there's also like I don't know, I feel like there's just, I want to say like maybe adventurous or brave, but also like sort of solid, stable, I feel like,
Yes.
and committed. I think that sort of feels like the traits that I've heard, and some of them they resonate with me more or less, for sure. But beyond that, I think apparently sensual. Apparently Tauruses are sensual. They like nice things. Yeah, that.
Yeah, you actually have a pretty good understanding of Taurus compared to most people. Because people will just look at Taurus and say stubborn, and that's it. Like that's really all people know about it. But sensuality. Taurus is ruled by the planet Venus. So it's all about beauty, pleasure, eroticism, physical touch, experiencing life through the senses. Good food, good music, art, beauty. Tauruses are connoisseurs of the physical world. So there are two signs in the zodiac that are ruled by Venus, one of them being Taurus, which, kind of what we're describing here. But Libra is the other sign. Libra is intellectualized beauty. Think about like the Fibonacci spiral, the Sistine Chapel. It's beauty that has been taken and then turned into a higher vibration of beauty through human thought.
Well, okay.
Taurus is beauty through the natural world. It's going and admiring all of the plants and flowers as they are, walking up to the mango tree and saying, this one's misshapen and this one's large and this one's not ripe yet, and it's all beautiful. It's to
like
appreciate things as they are. But of course, stubbornness, that stubborn quality actually comes from Taurus's desire for security and stability. So Tauruses don't like to change. They want things to be consistent in their lives.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Some of that, yeah, I don't know. I also feel like, I just also feel like the opposite sometimes in terms of like, I think the connoisseur of the physical world are like wanting nice things in terms of food, drink, movies, art, all that for sure, I think checks out. And I feel like I'm more and more discovering that. Like I sort of feel like a snob, but it's more like just like,
it's called quality, baby.
Exactly.
That's what it is. Tauruses are connoisseurs of beauty. They like quality.
I think that I definitely do. And I think that also then I weaponize that against myself too, of like desiring a certain level of quality in what I do or put out there, and probably in judgmental ways for sure. I think that probably goes both ways in terms of like being judgmental of other people too, but trying not to be.
Yeah. So these are some of the basic connotations that go with Taurus. They're also like Tauruses like the idea of having a life with the stability and security, maybe holding on to their money, saving money, or spending money on things that they really feel like they're investing quality into. Taurus, if it were a location in nature, it would be a rose garden. But it could also be, someone who's built a shack in the woods or, a house in the middle of the forest. It's the sign that rules buildings, property, and homes.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So, just some Taurus connotations for you.
Yeah, I need a cabin in the woods. I've always wanted. Yeah.
Hey, it might not be out of the question for you.
No, I don't think so.
So, all right. So we know that your sun sign is Taurus. Well, the sun sign is in a conjunction, meaning that it's in the same part of the sky that when you were born with the planet, with the asteroid Juno. So Juno is the asteroid of marriage. So it's not outside of the realm of you to be somebody who's naturally like you want a partner, you want a partnership in this lifetime. Partnership is something that you're invested in. And then on top of that, we've got the moon and Jupiter, the sun, and the asteroid of marriage all in the seventh house of partnership, romantic love, these kinds of things. So it's the Libra area of life.
Ah, okay.
So we've got Taurus and Libra, all of these Venusian qualities, partnership, love, stability, security. You are an incredibly Venus-oriented person.
What does that mean? I mean, I guess you were just saying it, but yeah, very love, romantic.
Yeah, partnership focused on quality, sensuality, beauty, eroticism, partnership. You know, you, Venus as a boy, that Bjork song is about you.
That's I'm
You
gonna
know?
listen to that after this. I
Yeah,
love
the
that.
chorus. The chorus says, he believes in beauty. He's Venus as a boy.
Yeah. I love that.
So that
Yeah, well,
was
I think I'm like coming into that now. I think I was very repressed on most of, at least sensuality, eroticism, all that stuff felt like naughty or bad or
yeah. Well,
not naughty in the fun way. Yeah.
you've got a few things in the birth chart that are showing a certain level of disorder or
Ah.
pain or wounding in those areas of life.
Hmm.
So we've got a high emphasis on the Taurus, security, stability, partnership. But then once it goes into the underworld, facing your trauma, sexuality, intensity, this is more of a dicey area of life for you.
That
You
makes
know.
sense.
But before we go into the underworld, let's
Yeah,
go a little bit further. Do you know what your moon sign is?
I do not.
So, my friend, you and I have something in common.
Ooh.
We were both born on the new moon in the cycle of the moon phase. So,
Oh.
in astrology, when you're born in the new moon, that means your sun sign and your moon sign are the same sign.
Oh, okay.
So, you're a Taurus sun with a Taurus moon.
Ooh, I'm just all the Taurus.
It's
Okay.
so Taurus. And then on top of that, Jupiter is right on top of the moon in Taurus as well. So, before I sound like a broken record too much, Jupiter is the planet of expansion, what we've naturally already developed, how we're already gifted in a certain area of life. Well, you're gifted in Taurus things,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
it's like your chart is really stacked on this one theme, and you have some other things that you need to work on in this lifetime.
Yeah, that sounds that sounds right.
You can't develop Taurus any further and kind of make progress as a soul.
Okay.
Like you're Taurus. You're already sensual and pleasurable, etc. So you might need to start working on some Scorpio stuff in this lifetime.
Ah, well, good thing I found a partner who's
There's a
Scorpio.
Scorpio. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and in your birth chart, do you know what your rising sign is?
I do not.
It's Scorpio.
Okay.
So you've got the sun and moon in Taurus opposing a rising sign in Scorpio. So although you are quite stable and grounded and relationship oriented, erotic, sensual, pleasurable, people might get the opposite impression of you on a first impression. Scorpio rising, people are either intimidated by you or they might see an intense sexual attraction to you. You might feel as though when people are around you, like their unconscious stuff kind of comes out. So there's an intensity that you come in with that just, it's pulling on other people in some capacity.
I definitely get intense a lot, and I feel like I am intense, or I can be.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't say that I get a lot of at least that sexual desire, or at least I haven't experienced that in
Sure.
terms of that like immediate attraction thing. But when you're saying like unconscious things come out, I think that probably is why people like I'm a good listener and people will just share things pretty quickly. Like
Yeah.
that sounds like that for sure.
Yeah. It could be a possibly a very disarming quality that you have.
I feel like I'm genuine. So that is probably it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and when the sun and the moon are in the same part in the birth chart, like I said, you and I both have this, there's less cognitive dissonance because the ego and the id are functioning the same way.
Okay.
The internal and external self. So it does make people more genuine.
Hey, wow. I
So
honestly didn't know the connection between the signs and like Freud,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I honestly had no idea that they'd sort of overlapped so well.
Oh yeah. I mean, a major part. So in my practice, I'm what they call an archetypal astrologer. So that means that I'm studying, like Freudian archetypes, Carl Jung archetypes, and how do we apply the archetypes to the stars? And then what do the stars say about your life's journey? What are you here to do?
Okay.
So with a Scorpio placement in the birth chart, whether it's the sun, moon, or rising, Scorpio energy is one of the most challenging to live through, but one of the most necessary to come by.
Mm.
Because, Taurus is all about the overworld and beauty and pleasure and sensuality, but Scorpio is about going under the surface, touching
Mm.
what the physical, sensual world can't even experience. So it's about going inward. When we see Scorpio strong in somebody's birth chart, and on top of this, you were born with Pluto, Scorpio's ruler, right on the ascendant. So when you were born, Pluto was rising on the horizon. So
Okay.
you're a Pluto rising, I guess you could say.
I
But
like that.
anytime we see significant Scorpio and Pluto placements in a birth chart, the karma is very potent because it is a major part of your destiny in this lifetime to shed the trauma of your ancestors.
Mm.
Cutting generational ties. Scorpio and Pluto are ruled by the elimination systems of the body, the sacrum and the anus. This is where we excrete things, literally.
Yeah. Whoa.
So,
Okay.
on a spiritual level, you're kind of like a little grim reaper in your bloodline. And because Scorpio is the archetype of death, where Taurus is all about what's alive, what's living, it's pleasure, it's beauty, it's sensuality. Scorpio's like, baby, we got to go into the underworld and cut ties and eliminate things, kill things off that no longer serve the ancestors, the bloodline, etc.
God, that honestly feels there's something in that feels right. And also like my confusion as a human in some way.
Well, there's
Uh,
a big push and pull going on. And in your birth chart, the moon, which represents the mother and the id, the unconscious, is opposing Pluto. So oftentimes when we see this in someone's birth chart, either they lose their mother at a very young age, there could be an intense relationship with the mother. You've got Jupiter there too, so maybe there's a dichotomy between optimistic, strong relationship with the mom, but also maybe shedding a lot of her trauma, a lot of her insecurities, things that she's gone through. There's something about you and the mother where it's like really shedding the generational trauma there.
ooh, that I need to talk to my mom about that. Yeah, I think she'd find that interesting, or deny that there was any of that. She's born in February, so but
You know what day?
second.
February. Okay, so she's an Aquarius.
Yeah.
So she's putting a lot of in your birth chart. Aquarius rules the family sector of your chart. So that can often denote like the family sector being ruled by Aquarius, a dryness,
Hmm.
maybe not the most emotionally attentive. Aquarius is more about being service to the planet rather than service to the family.
I feel like she's in service to the family or everyone else but herself. I think
Okay.
that feels right in some
All
way,
right.
and I think I took off after that in some capacity. But interesting. Well, yeah, I don't know. In terms of things that like generational trauma, I mean, spent a lot of time thinking about that, or just the differences in just our family specifically, because it gets overwhelming going beyond that. But I mean, even last week I had a spirit guide reading, and we were like, and that's something that I've never done before. But it was like sort of
Whoa.
like we were talking about ancestors and like trying to break that. I guess I sort of am starting that journey too, or starting to, because I feel like kind of alone in terms of ancestry, and or like I don't connect with, you know, more old white people, or I don't want to maybe.
Yeah.
And that's the shame stuff that I need to work on. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes people who are Scorpio or have strong Scorpio or Pluto aspects, such as yourself, shame can be a major theme
Mm.
because Scorpio is ruled by the sacral chakra. That's one of the ruling, placements. That's where sex and sexuality and creation are found in the body. So when somebody's not activating that area of themselves, what shuts down our sex life is shame.
Mm.
What shuts down our self-worth is guilt.
Yeah, both of those. Yeah.
So you're here to transform yourself. That's a major part of it. And again, being a Scorpio rising, maybe people aren't like sexually attracted to you or polarized by you or whatever, but when you show up, change is afoot.
Hmm.
You've got that connotation with you. And of course, you've got these Taurus things too. So maybe it's like a little shape shifting between the two archetypes, but they're both present very strongly in your birth chart.
That's interesting because I've even recently I've noticed I think that I feels like I'm always in a state of transition and that it feels like there's just change happening and it's hard for me, but I also am good at it at the same time. It's sort of like that initial, I mean, you said that it's like stability is what Taurus want, but then but it seems like, yeah, I'm sort of writing that or like always something new is happening every week and I'm like trying to balance it. But yeah, I don't know. But also just the idea that I'm a Grim Reaper showing up for change is kind of cool.
Yeah, well, because the
yeah.
Grim Reaper up against Mother Nature. That's the Taurus and the Scorpio axis.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Some
So,
biblical almost. Yeah.
well, it's archetypal. We're
Yeah,
all made
right.
up of these stars. It's like these are the proponents of the universe. This is what weaves our reality together.
I like, yeah. No,
So,
yeah, we are Stardust. I love that. Yeah.
right? So when you have Pluto in the first house, well, Pluto represents death, intensity, transformation, the Scorpio things of life. The first house is self. So you might be somebody who throughout your life has been under ego storm, ego death, like constantly feeling like you're death and rebirth, these kinds of things. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that is?
So like the death and rebirth, I mean, to me, it makes me think of travel and I love traveling and that I've often felt that it is sort of a rebirth or like I can really, that's where maybe I heal or actually will, I don't know. Well, a lot of times when I'm traveling, I'm definitely experiencing the quality that I, but I think there is this like, it's almost like I get a reboot. And I talk about, as a writer, and especially in LA, like I think a lot of us sort of talk about seasons in our own life, where it just feels like, oh, this is a new season or a new chapter. Like I feel like that a lot, but at the same time, I also sort of feel like I haven't read the previous chapters of my own book, so I'm like still in the same, like it's a reboot, but like not much has changed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense that you're jumping to travel because Pluto opposes Jupiter in your birth chart. So Jupiter is a planet of international expansion, seeking throughout the world, learning from other cultures. You have a desire to merge with cultures outside of your own, to explore, expand yourself. So when things get really hard, travel is a good solution for you to reset yourself as well.
It doesn't feel like running away, or is that okay? Like okay,
I
running
think
away.
it's kind of like it's okay to run away to travel to rejuvenate yourself,
Right.
you know? Because as whenever we have, if the pressure is too much, we need a way for relief. And for you, even a weekend trip, a car trip, that kind of thing, a day trip, these can even be just favorable ways, a change of scenery.
I think, yeah, I get more anxious when I don't get those or when they seem hard to do. I think also I don't necessarily like it's not hard to take a weekend or a drive or something, but a lot of times it feels like it's always hard to do no matter what. But I've done like 3-month trips and backpacking and just always never feels easy either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you have the instinct to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So that's that moon sign, which is the id, the unconscious, and then Jupiter, traveling, expansion, optimism. There's just this sense of trust and faith, like I'll figure it out as I go.
Traveling is the only time where or not the only time, but I think I feel the most, yeah, certain of that, especially
Yeah.
if I'm on my own. If other people are there, then I have to worry about them. I don't have to, but I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then that could be like maybe some codependency of like worrying about somebody else's emotions. And you've got all of these planets in the seventh house of other people. So you've really developed taking care of, nurturing, being present for other people. And now we're starting to get into the territory of your destiny in this lifetime. So
Ooh.
shall we talk about that?
Yeah. Well, and I will just say that, yeah, codependency is something that comes up a lot with, well, Lily, but I think also it's definitely a thing with family or just relationships in general. Like, I think that I'm learning that. But yeah, but hey, yeah, tell me my destiny.
All right. Well, according to the past life placement in your birth chart, the past life sign is Virgo,
Hmm.
but also it's in the 11th house, Aquarius. So
Like my
you,
mom. Okay.
like your mom. So you've already developed Aquarius qualities and you're the son of an Aquarius. So Aquarius is the sign of caring for the group, being concerned with the world at large, being altruistic, humanitarian. It's developing friendship. It's having wellness for everyone. And then Virgo is the sign of details, reality, organization, practicality. It's moving away from magic. It's to be
Ah,
really developed in terms of like the rational, physical mind and practical reality. So your soul comes from that lineage already. You've developed those things inside of yourself, how to care for the group and how to be focused on reality. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
um, well, it's really hard for me to not think about the group or be worried about the group even when I don't have to. Like, and that's why, as a kid, I stopped doing birthday parties pretty early because they just stopped being, they felt like a chore or like I had to like take care of other people, even though it's about me, right? Celebrating
Oh,
myself didn't feel either important enough, or I was too worried about what other people were thinking or if they were having a good time. Which is definitely a mom thing. Like that's my mom for sure.
well, and that's why your mom doesn't pull you into your destiny in that regard,
Right.
And it's not that you can't love your mom, be close with your mom, etc. You just can't mirror that behavior of your mom anymore.
Yes. That sounds good. Let's break that mirror. And what was the other part of that?
Reality, practicality,
I
logical thinking rather than spiritual knowing.
yes, I definitely, well, as in like evidence in terms of being very beginner in terms of this and spiritual thinking, that never was my upbringing. Or magic to me was maybe the natural world or like movies and art. Like that's magic to me. But spiritual, like I never had even a religious upbringing at all, which I'm glad for. But it's only really now where I'm just sort of like really wanting to explore that spiritual thing or what's in the body, because I am very intellectual, very dominated by my thoughts or what I'm saying.
Yeah, very
So
Virgo-y.
sure. But yeah, there's like a big disconnect, I think, in terms of sometimes knowing what I'm actually feeling and then what I'm saying. And that might be, it sounds like it's the conflicting signs in some way. Like I'm sort of both, but I am good at, well, tricking myself and other people about which sort of one is in charge. Maybe, I don't know. That sounds vague, but
I get what you're saying.
yeah.
So, you know, I like to think of astrology as a teacher for becoming a shapeshifter.
Mm.
We all have all of the archetypes within us. It's just some people are really concentrated. You are boy Venus over here. You've really expanded that. So I think what life does, if reincarnation is real, and I believe it is it keeps recycling that same soul and getting you to perfect understanding all perspectives.
Mm.
So because you're already pretty developed in Virgo and Aquarius, developing those any further isn't really going to help you. You can't be any more reality focused or any more of service to the group and grow at this point in your soul's journey. So, in this lifetime, the signs that you're here to develop more of are Pisces and Leo.
Interesting. What does that mean? Yeah.
Well, you're talking, my sun, moon, and Mercury are all in Pisces. My past life
Oh,
sign is Leo.
oh, so you're
So
who I needed.
I
That's
guess, I mean, but you know what? Let's talk about what these archetypes are about.
yeah.
So with Pisces, my Mercury sign is right on the same degree as your destiny sign.
Whoa.
So Pisces, I mean, I'm a professional astrologer for God's sake. My whole life is devoted to helping other people heal their trauma and, understanding the spiritual side of life, etc. But that's because Aquarius is one of my destiny signs. I'm trying to actually learn to care for the group because I've learned to care for myself enough. Like I have no problem being the center of attention, the star of the show.
That checks out. Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
that's easy for me. It's super comfortable, super easy.
Mm.
So my soul can't do Leo anymore. I have to start
Ah,
being altruistic and caring for other people.
interesting. But that's what I mean. That's what this is. So
Yeah, well,
you're,
exactly.
yeah,
I'm on, but I'm also starting my own podcast too, and that's going to be like, that's comfort zone. That's Leo territory, you
that's
know.
true.
So, but Pisces is to develop a spirituality, a spiritual sense for the world, not to just see what's in front of you, but to notice the patterns of life. Pisces is astrology, tarot cards, magic, but it's also compassion, kindness, forgiveness, surrender, letting go, realizing that reality is only going to take you so far. Because Virgo, your past life sign, that's the magnifying glass. It's looking at the details and understanding the logical step A to point B. Pisces is like the telescope. Well, not even the telescope, because that's still focusing on one thing. It would be like to see, it would be the screen, the movie projector, to
Yeah,
put
it's
something, to see the big picture, to see the whole thing at once and romanticize something and find beauty and everything being interconnected. Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. So
ah,
it's about understanding and completion. So you're here to move out of reality and learn how to dream.
ooh. I mean, well, no, like I feel like, I mean, I think I am a dreamer in some way, but also like what you're describing in terms of the big picture, I think I tend to, at least in the stuff that I work on and creatively, I think I do, that is sort of what I'm trying to find or trying to talk about, or like the act of writing is exploring and trying to find those connections and patterns. But I mean, what you're saying in terms of like letting go and and just like not being so, I guess not superficial, but just like what's in front of me, going beyond and going within and without, like
Yeah.
that does feel like that's where that's my instinct to, like that's been what my instinct is of late, of like, okay, yes, I need to get out of my own head a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah.
Well, because the Virgo stuff, my parents are both Virgos. They're both doctors. They're both very logical, grounded people. They both deal with what's in front of them. And they're both healers as well. I mean, I'm a Pisces and I'm a healer too. I just do it from the opposite point of view.
Right.
But Pisces destiny is also about healing yourself, getting away from criticism, because that's
Hmm.
Virgo territory, and actually finding compassion. So
Yeah,
we've
no, self-forgiveness is like really hard for me. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Pisces, but then we also have Leo, the sign of the ego,
Mm.
developing self-esteem, self-worth, boundaries, knowing that you are worthy of good things, making life about you, being the center of your own world. Again, I've developed this. I'm like, yeah, easy peasy, like make it about me all day, every day. But that's not going to help me. I have to be of service. You can't be of service anymore. I mean, of course, you can still do it, but that's not going to help you grow. It's actually learning to put yourself first.
That's, well, in a way, the sort of, as you said, the podcast is more like exactly in your lane. And
It's
for
my
me, it's
comfort zone.
right. And it's like there's some part of me that feels like, oh, I try to like, it feels like I'm at the center of attention, but I don't want to be. And then this podcast sort of does feel like this is me. Yeah, it's actually become about taking care of myself. And I didn't know that's what it was when it started, but it's sort of naturally gone into this, I guess, Leo territory.
But also
Um,
Pisces, because it's taking care of
yes,
yourself. Care mixed with the self care.
yes, there it is. That's
You know?
literally because yeah, I mean, I learned from my parents to not, basically not do that,
Yeah.
like, we're fine, we're strong, we're tough, we don't need help.
Yeah. Well,
And yeah.
it makes sense because Virgo is the sign of criticism and perfection.
Mm,
And then Aquarius, your other past life sign, is about dissolving the ego. So it's to kind of like dissolve your own ego by criticizing yourself and always putting others before you, focusing on others, like, whereas now you need to do the opposite and actually apply a lot of compassion and sweetness and forgiveness and expand the ego. You're
how do
here.
I do it?
Well, I mean, having your own podcast is a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
And like for me, as I go into my own podcast, I'm going to try to make it about telling other people's stories so that it does have that sense of being of service to the collective, helping other people see, this is what healing looks like.
Right.
But for you, like literally making a podcast or going deeper into all of the ways in which you're exploring healing, and maybe you're reviewing them and sharing how it helped you and this kind of stuff, you can still connect with other people, but you're the naked man. You're on a journey of healing yourself.
That's true. Yeah. And sort of a journalist in a way about that, about myself.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think in some ways I have those instincts in there. Like how I write, I always put I mean, everyone puts themselves in what they write, but I just feel like in anything that I write, it's really impossible for me to not put myself in. Like a movie review. It's like my experience watching the movie is really what I'm reviewing. Like it can go to anything. So I have that instinct, but I guess it does. I don't know. I think I have a hard time wanting to be the center of attention or being the center of attention, but it does sort of, I think, happen. It does with friends, I think. Like when I come, like, because I've been as a traveler, I sort of come and go, and I sort of, it feels like I'm a celebrity sometimes when I come back, and I don't. That makes me uncomfortable. But there's also something about owning that and just having fun with it.
Yeah.
Too.
It's to like, if Leo is one of your destiny signs, Leo's ruled by the sun, the ego. So it's literally to hold yourself and like say, I'm not going to break under all of this light that's being shined upon me. It's learning how to hold being in the limelight. So, and like my past life being Leo, I did theater. I've been in like, done tons of stage work. Like, like it's so easy for me that I can't grow anymore doing it, but you need to learn to do it.
I mean, I think in the last I see myself as a performer now, or like that is a lane that I want to grow in. I want to act. I want to. I mean, improv was like my first thing into that, and
I was going to suggest that you should be doing that.
I kind of like with my anxiety, that was really tough. I think it gave me
out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah.
Because improv is a perfect example of Pisces Leo combined. Because Virgo is like rehearsal, perfection. Pisces is go with the flow and surrender. And then Leo is performing. So you have to go with the flow of performing. If you could keep going into improv, that would do so much. The reason it gives you anxiety is because it's out of your soul's comfort zone. And it's actually the thing that you need to develop the most, improv.
God damn it. That's not what I retired, Danny. I retired.
I'm just going to say, if you want to really do that soul work, something like improv or taking a stand-up comedy class or, something about being in the limelight and learning to really like own that personal sense of pizzazz, you're going to do really well, but you have to commit to that. You need to be pushing yourself outside of that comfort zone. Break that glass ceiling.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. When you hear all of this, how is it reverberating through you?
Oh, I mean, I think it's all checking out, and it also like that makes perfect sense. And part of me is like, well, I mean, I think I am even part of me can't let go of the analyzing it and being like, well, okay, let's take the improv part. What is another thing that's different that I can do that actually?
I mean, why go for something else when the perfect teacher is already right there?
That's funny. All right.
I think Mercury retrograde at the time of the recording too. So,
ooh, what does that entail or mean?
It's a good time to return back to something. So if you've already hung up your, improv jacket, this is a good time to start thinking about it again, returning to it, signing up for a class. To literally retrograde, that just means to move backwards. To review something, to come back to it.
That's and it's also interesting because I think I've been getting sort of signs in either like tarot or other things that I've been doing where it's sort of been not necessarily warning me against like taking on new things, but sort of reminding me to kind of close some of to kind of what you're just saying, like review past things or maybe close loops that are, I think I'm the man of unfinished ideas or unfinished products or projects. And it's sort of like, maybe you're forgetting something back here. Sort of a thing.
Well, and Leo is one of the signs of loyalty. So one of the biggest things with Leo is to see something all the way through, especially relationships or creative projects. So
I feel like I have that in relationships where it's like really hard for me to give up on one.
yeah,
But and sometimes when I think I would like to. But yeah, I think it's for projects is where I more need to follow through. But
yeah,
it's mostly because I mean I literally have like right now a curtain with all these stars, and it feels like each one is like a different project that I want to do. So it's like overwhelming to be like, oh, how do I follow through all of these? I mean, one at a time or whatever, but
yeah.
that's been my whole life is like, oh God, there's too many stars.
Well, some other Pisces things that could be very useful to you as well would be psychedelics, ayahuasca, plant medicine, these kinds of things. It's very Jupiterian. Pisces is ruler because Jupiter is about exploration. Well, psychedelic exploration is just as important or needed, as other kinds of exploration, traveling.
I have had that desire for a while. I mean, I wasn't, I was sort of late to, I mean, college was more about drinking, unfortunately, than really any other thing. But like, I've only had shrooms once and I was like 21 and just did not do it in the right way. But like, sort of, I mean, I guess as a, I'm intrigued. I want to experience the ayahuasca. I want to, I mean, even like psilocybin, like therapy and stuff like that. Like there was a moment when I was in Mexico where like, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be a therapist doing like mushroom therapy. But I think I just want to actually be a, a patient or be involved in it and experience
Yeah.
that world.
Well, and wanting to be the healer, the person administering it, is you
Right.
going back to being of service to others, which you've
Right.
already developed. So of course you're approaching it from that angle because it's comfortable,
Right.
you know. Whereas, like for me, Aquarius is one of my destiny signs. I'm training to become an ayahuasca shaman.
Mm.
So my long-term goal, I've been studying with the Shipibo tribe through Peru for the last 3 years. I'm making a plan to go down there,
So cool.
hopefully in the next year or two. But I've got a teacher who I'm working very closely with, who's worked with the tribe, and the ultimate goal is to do astrology readings for people to prep them for their ayahuasca ceremonies.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
I'm
that's
in.
very
Put me
much
on.
very of service, right?
Yeah, put me on the waiting list.
Please, I'd
Yeah.
love to have you. You know,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's been something that's been on my mind or like a desire to do. But it's sort of, I think the fear for me is not necessarily like what will come up necessarily. It's kind of just that I'll feel like I'll need or want it because I think I have an addictive personality. And especially when you're saying the Taurus thing about like liking, quality, I
pleasure.
think that's sort of what it sometimes comes down to. Like I'm loving the burger that I'm eating, but maybe I'm not necessarily grateful or experiencing it. I mean, it's either one or the other. Like sometimes it's just like there's never enough. I need
Yeah,
the next burger, I need the shake, and then I feel like shit.
yeah,
But that could be drugs, alcohol, anything. And so sex. So like I think that's for me is like I don't necessarily trust myself, even though I feel like I do hold myself accountable. But like that's the worry is that like, oh, it'll become an addictive thing for me, even though I don't think it's necessarily an addictive, but that's just, I don't know. That's more based on my experience with like alcohol and just anything that I've liked and take pleasure in, then becomes sort of, I go to it when I'm anxious.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hedonism can be a very Taurus trait, to just jump into pleasure as much as possible and really get the feeling, the sensation that like, oh my God, this is everything, you
Yes.
know. But
um,
it's not something to be like discouraged away from. It's just like I said at the beginning, astrology is a teacher of how to become a good shapeshifter.
hmm.
You've already developed Venus and Taurus. So you can always jump in like to pleasure. And if you can maximize pleasure when it's time for pleasure, you've got it in spades. But like, all right, outside of pleasure and enjoying things and pleasure in relationships, because you've got all those planets in the relationship house, how do we now begin shaping what you're being learned or developing? How do you shape shift into somebody who's got that sense of ego, self-worth, putting yourself first, expanded self. That's where the emphasis goes from relationships or caring to the group, and also saying like, how do I care for myself? Self-care. How do I make myself the center of my own life and world?
How? Yeah. Well, I mean, I think setting boundaries, I've been doing that and it feels very clunky.
Yeah.
And I feel like I talk about it a lot to the point where I feel like sort of bored with myself. But like, I mean, but I'm in physical therapy, and that was just like this weird chain of events that now it's like, oh my God, I'm taking care of myself. This feels honestly very empowering and cool. And also exhausting too, because it's like, oh, I'm learning how
Maybe
to
foreign.
yeah, I'm learning how to walk again, basically, because I have flat feet. So it's like, and 20 years of walking wrong has sort of, yeah, my body's like, oh, you're paying attention to me now. All right, then we'll start aching, so you actually feel these things.
Aha.
That's
So
been sort of the last 2 weeks has been that. Yeah,
yeah, but that all goes along with that Pisces energy of healing.
yeah.
So while we're on the topic of healing, let's talk about this asteroid known as the wounded healer in astrology.
Okay.
This asteroid is known as Chiron, Chiron, Chiron. Chiron in mythology is a centaur.
Oh, okay.
So it's the energy of being fully integrated, the man and the horse becoming one, literally being integrated. So Chiron in the birth chart denotes your greatest pain, your most profound pain that leads to your most profound healing. So you've got Chiron in Gemini, and then it's in the Scorpio sector of the birth chart, which is the 8th house, sex, trauma, intensity. It's also on
Yeah.
top of the planet Venus. So let me translate what all of that means. When Chiron is in Gemini, Gemini is the planet of boundaries and communication. Chiron is what's wounded. So, especially early in life, having a wounded sense of boundaries, not being able to say no, not being able to draw the line with people.
Mm.
Does this make sense to you at all?
I'm trying to think in terms of,
Just boundaries in general,
oh, yeah.
maybe.
Well, no, boundaries in general for sure. I was trying to think of like a sexual trauma in
Oh
terms
no,
of
no, 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 no.
boundaries.
We'll
Yeah.
we'll 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 take it slice by
Oh, okay.
slice here. So it's
Yeah.
just
Okay.
boundaries, communication, etc.
Yeah. No, I mean that checks out, or that feels, yeah. I mean, mentioned that, yeah, I struggle with those, and there's a lot of, I think guilt and shame comes into those places
And
too.
there's the 8th house stuff, guilt, shame,
Right.
maybe not setting boundaries because of the guilt or the shame. So that's the Scorpio stuff coming up. And then Venus being there, this will show up especially in dating and relationships,
Hmm.
not setting proper boundaries in your relationships. So, what initially is a deep wound, eventually you're going to start healing this and then maybe have a flexibility with your boundaries, but they're still there. You learn to become a little bit more communicative about what feels good and what doesn't, but especially in your relationships, romantic, sexual, and otherwise.
That, I mean, I think that is something, I mean, for sure, teenager, young 20s Andy struggled with. And I think that was sort of like, I mean, it's been now torn to shreds, and rightfully so, like kind of the friend zone thing. But I think me not being able to communicate my feelings, or sort of like owning what I needed or wanted in a relationship and just voicing that, it sort of felt like I was being almost predatorial, I feel like, even though I was mostly
Sure.
just being like, hey, our friendship feels weird. Maybe we need to be doing something else. I was sort of just coming from this place of openness, but it comes out as weird, especially as the man in those scenarios.
Yeah.
And that just like compounds the shame, I
I
think,
was just
too.
going to say the shame and all of that. And, the 5th house, that Leo destiny placement, it's ruled by the solar plexus chakra. It's located about 3 inches above the belly button. By expanding the ego, you actually eradicate guilt.
Mm.
To eradicate shame, you have to go to the sacral chakra located at the genitals and get in touch with your sexuality. So these are two major cornerstones in your life. Getting in touch with the self-worth, the ego. If you have any stomach problems, it's doing whatever you can to heal that. But
That's
also,
actually, I
oh,
mean, well, no, just whenever I'm doing brain spotting, and whenever I feel anything, it's in the stomach.
Aha, solar plexus.
Yeah, it's always there. Yeah.
There you go. For some people, they might be overthinking things and have mental anxiety. That would be a third eye disorder. Maybe people like really feel like they need to speak up and they don't. Throat chakra. Maybe their heart is pounding or they're so in their feelings that it hurts. Heart chakra disorder. But the solar plexus, it's about listening to your gut and having enough of a self-esteem that you can handle the discomfort of others, other people not liking you, other people judging you, etc. And it's stopping worrying about what the group thinks and think to yourself, what do I think?
Yeah. That does sound like what I need to work on. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So that's another way. And improv is going to be a good tool. I'm just saying, because you're in front of people and then you kind of get nervous and like, are people going to think this is funny and blah, blah, blah. But it teaches you to start really honing in on your own craft. It forces you to think about yourself, developing your ego, etc., and become good at something to raise your self-esteem.
Right. And trusting obviously the instinct and the gut, because that's sort of all you can really do in those scenarios. Like there's not which I think my gut is like trying to tell me things a lot and I overthink it or whatever, or it's hard for me to know what I want or need. It's hard for me to communicate that with like my body communicating it to my brain or whatever. It's just like sort of, I guess I'm always putting myself on the stand too. I'm like, wait, why do I want to do this? Why
Yeah.
it like pleasure feels like there has to be a good reason for it in some way, even though like pleasure, like what's wrong with just feeling pleasure?
There is nothing wrong with it. But in your birth chart, Venus, Taurus's ruler, is on top of Chiron, the wounded healer. So we think about all of this Venus stuff. Well, your sun sign is Venus, Taurus, ruled by Venus. So it could also be a self-esteem wound that you're here to heal as well. That's another way we can interpret this.
Well, I mean, I'll mention this like I don't know where this will be placed or if I'll whatever. Basically what I would say is like my wound or my childhood thing is sex related and body related. It's that
okay.
Growing up pre-internet and just not knowing, I have foreskin and I grew up basically thinking that was gross, like because that's what everyone basically was saying in pop culture and just everywhere. Like and my dad and my grandfather don't have foreskin, so I was like, here I am different, don't know why. I wouldn't see, I wasn't like until I looked at porn, but even then I didn't see, like in a weird way it was like my representation. It was like I didn't see my penis, and it was and it was like I had fantasies about getting a circumcision. Like to me that was my secret. Like I didn't want to tell anyone that. I mean, not that it's something that you necessarily share, but especially with kids, especially boys, like making fun of it or even drawings of penises, like just the one that everyone does. Like that's not actually how my penis looks like. So it's this it's a card against humanity. Like this is something that I've been building to share on the podcast too. And like knowing that this will it's really big for me to do. And like when I was first entering therapy, that was the hardest thing to talk about. Like I was shaking the first time I said that. Like
so here's shame surrounding sexuality.
Yeah.
There it is. But also it's something that's meant to heal you in this lifetime.
Well, and now I'm like sort of getting to the point of being proud of that, or that I wasn't necessarily, like you could see it as mutilation, or that you've been, this was a decision not made with my consent if it was the other way, so there is, it definitely does feel like the sort of vessel of healing, of sort of owning that part of myself and sort of being proud of it in some way. But yeah, like especially growing, like first relationships in terms of sex, like it wasn't until really college, and that's why I had to get drunk. Like that was the only way I was comfortable to like reveal myself, because I was afraid that I would be rejected.
Liquid courage.
Yeah, and then I would have too much. So
well, and Leo is the sign of courage.
Yeah.
but like here's another example of why Leo's my past life and it's what you're moving towards. From a very young age, I turned 18, I was like, I'm gay. I come from conservative Catholic Cuban parents.
Mm.
You know, that was not okay.
Right.
But I was like, this is who I can't help but assert my identity. You know, whereas you're developing this to say, you know what, I've got a foreskin on my penis. So what? Like literally, but that's like
Yeah.
that's like
Yeah.
the astrology of it. Like you just have to like, this is who I am, like it or don't. I don't care if you don't like it. It's who I am.
Right.
You know, that's that self-esteem piece.
Yeah, I think I've been very dominated by what other people think, or worried about that. And as a, creative, you're like, yeah, putting way too much power in what someone will think about what you
Yeah.
wrote or made. And
Whereas
it's
I
like,
need to
that's
start thinking about what other people think. You know, so you and I have a very interesting thing in our astrology because what one is good at, the other one's developing.
well,
So there's a lot
yeah.
of chemistry, synergy there.
Yeah, some yin and yang. I like it.
Yeah. So it's typically, and plus we're both born on the new moon. So it's just natural friendship vibe.
I'm in.
I'm in too, man, you know? And I want to say thank you for your vulnerability. Like it's amazing to get to hear people's stories and see how the astrology really does like reflect them.
Yeah, no, I mean it definitely, those patterns sort of come to life, or yeah, you make those connections, and there's something about that feels, well, you feel slightly more understood and less alone, right? Like that's part of it. Like, oh, I'm not the only one with all these signs or all these different things. That it points to that I'm one in a long line of things, but also uniquely me at the same time. So it's kind of it's a cool way of being seen. That also, it's like, I didn't necessarily, I mean, yeah, I'm talking with you, but you just looked at my birth chart. Like you saw me through the birth chart.
Right.
I didn't have to perform anything for that. I didn't have to do improv for you to see me. That'll be next time, I guess.
Yeah, right. I want to do a little lightning round of some things. We're coming up on time here.
Okay.
I definitely want to make sure I say some things about some of these other planets. So,
Okay.
first of all, your career placement is in Leo.
Okay.
So, being the best at your work, being seen, being received by the world, that's really important. You know,
Okay.
developing an ego around being like, yeah, I'm successful. And what? You
Mm,
know, to
yeah.
have that your ego and persona being recognized, like doing a podcast, let's, you know, but also having this like being the best at what you do, or like really owning what you do for work, for money, public image, huge part of destiny.
I love that, because yeah, I think I'm finally admitting my ambition and finally being like, okay, let's fucking do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Well, because the personal life placement is Aquarius. So just kind of being of service to the family, or maybe, you know, like that detached kind of cool Aquarian nature where it's about everybody else. In your birth chart, you also have Mars, the planet of sexuality, assertiveness, going after what you want. It could literally be a man's penis as well. It's in the
Oh,
sign of Aquarius. So Aquarius is the sign of having a dissolved ego or a wounded ego in some way.
okay.
So it's very
Yeah.
interesting to see Aquarius as one of your past life signs. You've got Mars, sexuality in Aquarius, dissolved ego around it. So that all fits into that past life. You're here to overcome that in this lifetime.
Right. Rebuild that ego. Yeah.
Yeah. We also have Mercury in Gemini. So you are someone who knows how to socialize, get around the local community. There's actually something about you that's quite um, expanded on relating to like your environment, maybe exploring new places, trying new things. Like Gemini's knowing every nook and cranny of the local community. It wants variety.
Yeah, that's 100% me for sure. Yeah. Like I don't want to go to the same place twice most of the time.
Well, there you go. You know,
Yeah.
you've got a natural ability, probably a good sense of direction too, actually, with this one.
Mm, I think probably if I trusted myself, I think I second guess the gut again. So I
Ah,
think I'm probably better at that than I think.
okay.
Yeah.
But then also, this is like the small talk placement, Mercury and Gemini. You're good at talking to people, you
Yeah,
know,
that checks
natural
out.
talent. But it's in the eighth house of sexuality and trauma intensity. So small talk that leads to like more deeper conversation too. You like depth in your conversation.
That's, yeah, I get mad when we talk about the weather for too long, you know?
There you go. So you're expanded in both the little and the big when it comes
Yeah.
to conversation. And then the last thing is maybe I want to talk about, you've got 3 planets in the sign of Capricorn.
Okay.
So Capricorn is the sign of finding yourself. So you've
Okay.
got Saturn in Capricorn. So as you age, finding yourself is going to be a huge part of that destiny. It's
I'm
like
glad to hear that. Yeah.
you're growing into like someone who's going to be a mentor and actually helping other people find their way as well.
Okay. I like the sound of that. Well, no, as someone who has sort of wished I had a mentor in some way, or like, yeah, some guidance in terms of the same things that I want,
Yeah.
So I'd love to be that. Yeah.
So we've got that energy popping up strong. And the fifth house, where your destiny sign is of ego, that's also where children are found. So do you want to be a father?
Yes, I do. Yeah. I mean, it's complicated in a lot of ways, but not in terms of the actual like wanting. It's just like what life gets in the way of it. But yeah, Lily and I definitely plan and want to have children. So
Yeah. Because
um
Capricorn is the sign of the father. So it's like as you age, you're meant to become like more and more daddy.
and well, I am daddy at home. Like
There you go.
I am daddy to Blondie for sure, her cat, and just like I do feel like a dad of the house in some way,
Yeah.
even without children, but that does feel like a role that I'm already, I guess, grooming myself for, or
Yeah.
feeling like,
Father
yeah,
figure, mentor, that kind of stuff. That's going to come more and more as you age.
I guess that makes sense. Especially if I actually have a kid,
Yeah, right.
it'll hasten that. Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about is potential ability for either art, spirituality, creativity, or even mediumship. We've got the moon, which is, the emotional self, and Jupiter right next to each other, expanded emotional awareness, touching, aspecting Neptune, the planet of dreams, fantasies, creativity, spirituality. It's the Pisces planet.
Oh.
So there's something in your chart that you should actually have natural gifts and talents around art, creativity, and spirituality.
Well, that's nice to hear. No, I think, well, I think if I'm being ego, if I accept my ego, I think I will say that, yes, I think I do have that natural talent. Yeah. It's really hard for me to say that I'm good at anything, but yeah.
Well, that's something, part of your destiny, own that ego around that.
Right. Yes.
But that's just about everything upon looking at your birth chart, for about an hour here. So I'm curious what you thought.
Ooh, it feels like a lot to like synthesize, but it also just sort of, it feels like in some way a recap of my life slash, like, yeah, like you said, sort of the path to follow ahead. And it's sort of that you did just read basically what I would have said are the things I need to work on, the things that I would like that it will be hard for me. I think you basically nailed all those things. And yeah, in some ways, none of it's surprising, because I think there's a reason I'm with you. It's like that I'm now open to this, like, to hearing these things, or open to, I mean, everything, I suppose, but like for change, and being a slightly different version of myself.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
shape. Yeah.
this is self-actualization. That's why people come and do sessions. It's just, here's what you've already developed. Here's what you need to move towards. We're all shapeshifters. We can learn to call upon different archetypes, different things, boundaries, family, career, self-worth. These are all just the archetypes of astrology.
Yeah.
If we can learn to balance those things and know when to pull one up and one back, that's called mastery.
Ooh. Yeah. I'm just envisioning, yeah, like sort of different cartridges I put in, like, okay, this is, yeah.
Yeah, it's time to
Leader.
wear this hat now.
Right. Exactly. That would be helpful. I just need like however 9 different hats to like put on to
You
remind
know
me
what?
who I
There's
am.
there's 12
Yeah.
astrology signs and 12 houses.
So I need 24 hats.
Well, 12 times 12,
Oh, okay. Way more. Yeah.
you know, I think it's
144.
100,
Yeah.
144. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like 144 kind of archetypal ideas to go with.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's time to explore all of them, I guess.
I guess so. Start with the ones in your
Right.
chart.
No, I know.
Start with Pisces and Leo, healing the ego. That's a good place to start.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, your sort of recommendation was improv for that. Uh,
Absolutely.
and
And also
probably,
ayahuasca and some plant medicine stuff as well. Anything spiritual, breath work, meditation, tarot, astrology, these kinds of things, and then going out and performing.
Okay. So yeah, I think I'm open to the more plant medicine, and definitely want to ask you or talk to you about that more.
I would
What
love
other,
to talk to you more about that.
yeah, what other opportunities there are for that? Because I think I'm ready to. I think I've been talking about it a while, and it's like, no, it's time to move on that.
Yeah, time to make some forward motion.
Yep.
Hey,
Yeah.
I definitely want to be your friend, especially with all the astrology in your birth chart. Like, there's just a lot of synergy.
I'm in. Yeah, and I mean, I meeting new people and connecting with new people. I mean, that's my favorite thing. And then, but also, I think reshaping who those people are, and because I think it's not that I was with a lot of toxic people, but they weren't necessarily serving who I want to become. So you certainly are one that does. Yeah. So
Well, thank you.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and I want to start my own podcast, so I've got a lot to learn from you.
Oh yeah, no, ask away. Thank
Well,
you so much.
you're
I know you're
welcome.
meeting Lily in like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, she's coming here soon. And then, let's keep the ball rolling.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Well, Danny, it was really nice to meet you. Very excited about, yeah, where the ball rolls.
It was a
Yeah.
pleasure, Andy. And I'll
Yeah.
talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, take it easy.
Bye. You too.
Bye.
I'm so grateful to Danny Santos for joining me and entering both Lily's and my life. I eagerly await the next stage of our friendship. But also in this moment, I'm grateful for myself, for trusting Danny, for releasing this episode. And as always, grateful to you all for listening. Editing this on February 11th, almost exactly 5 months after we had this conversation, was the first time I'd heard it since we had it. And I feel like I have consciously and unconsciously been putting in work on all of the areas we've covered. Though I haven't gone back to improv yet, god damn it. In a way, I think I've gone from a willingness to become the person you just heard and the direction prescribed to the point where I'm now ready to share that never-ending journey of becoming. Instead of a playlist this week, Danny Santos has designed breathwork classes for the 12 signs of the zodiac, with 3 levels for each sign. I have shared a link in the description to the playlist that most reflects his astro daddiness, a Pisces level 3 playlist. And since we recorded, Danny's podcast has become a reality. The Astro Daddy podcast is available wherever you listen to me. He's also at Santos Crystal Visions on Instagram and TikTok, and I don't think you need me to tell you he's worth injecting into your life. His journey to become an ayahuasca shaman is bringing him back home to Michigan to rev up for a pilgrimage to Peru. Next time on the Naked Man I will be attending his going away sound bath in a couple weeks' time. Monologue, baby. If you haven't already, as my dad always says, subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Help bring me into the limelight like apparently my destiny demands. Follow us. This episode of the Naked Man podcast was conceived by Andy Green in collaboration with Danny Santos. The Naked Man is a podcast hosted, created, and produced by me, Andy Green. All music was composed by Robert Panico, and all graphics were created by Christopher Miles.